Nous allons maintenant terminer nos extraits du Congrès de Londres. Écoutez Mary Caine, l'auteur d'un ouvrage qui s'appelle The Glastonbury Zodiaque, Key to the Mysteries of Britain. Mary Caine. Sur donc le zodiaque de Glastonbury. C'est un des hauts lieux de l'astrologie, de l'archéologie astrologique britannique.
These figures were all contoured by hills, particularly on the western side. Contoured by hills, particularly on the western side. Glastonbury's up here. Somerton, the ancient capital of Somerset, is on the Lions Pool. And they were all contoured enough for at least half the figures to have been outlined by streams, natural streams, with one exception, with two exceptions. This figure in Pisces, like a dolphin, great whale or leviathan, because he's got an astonishing extension, like a snake, onto his nose. It has been actually canalized by human labour into two arms of the River Brue. And the whole of that figure is done by the River Brue, but it's not natural anymore. What happened was, originally, that the Brue came along the tail of Scorpio here, and obviously opened out into a kind of marsh. But it was a whale-shaped marsh, so it was still the whale in present. And in order to use the land for agriculture, at some period, unstated, but long ago, that was drained, and this whale shape made. And the same thing is true of this ship, which stands for Cancer. That's also man-made, and it's done by drainage, what they call drainage reeds in Somerset. Same word as the River Rhine, which just means to run. So the little runnels which drain the land, which would otherwise be marshy. You might be interested to notice that the water signs have a tendency to be flamboyant. That is Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio over here. And the other figures don't flood, but these three still are inclined to do that, and have done a great many times in the past. I'll show you where they are, because one or two are a little bit more difficult to recognise. Notably Aries. His head is reverted as in the Paschal Lamb. Perhaps you can't see that very easily from where you are. So that's his nose, and this is the ear, and this is the back of the head. Now he's not drawn by streams, he's drawn by prehistoric roads. Where the streams are not, don't run, the prehistoric roads finish off the actual outlining of the figures. This is Taurus, only his head and foot, as you often get, of course, in old zodiacs, because of, well, you're all astrologers here. Somebody tell me why that is. Why is it so crowded on this side? Is it to do with the tilt of the ecliptic? And why is it so spread out on this side? Well, it was a sign of long and short ascension. Yes, I'm wondering. Well,
it's very likely.
You think that's the answer?
Because where does all people that asked this
where's Aries?
Look,
Aries is this red figure here, red for Mars.
Cancer starts as being crowded.
Well, they're all very crowded round here, really, compared with, see, there's only 3-4 figures. It is rather a crash.
Well, yes.
And in fact, the ball has almost been eliminated, as he is often in old zodiacs.
So it occupies a very small space in the sky anywhere.
Yeah, but so does Aries. It's a tiny little sign.
Yes, isn't it?
I think it is long and short.
I think it must be.
Long and short ascension. Sometime I have to tell you exactly what you mean by that. But I'm not an astrologer proper. I'm learning, but I'm not very
It's
good
the
at it.
width, the amount of space they take up in the sky as well. Right? Because
Yes,
it's
but
one
I
zodiac
think it
taking
can't be that, because Aries would only take up a tiny space here. The stars
On est un peu dans la géographie sacrée.
on their earthly counterparts when you put the planisphere to scale on the map. And Aries just falls on this area of his head. That doesn't account. And also, This is normal in old zodiacs, just to show the forefront of the bull and it's called, isn't it? They don't usually put in the whole. See, in the Kingston zodiac, you've got a splendid great bull, so I don't understand the reason for that. Got to Gemini now. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, a ship instead of a crab, but if you consider for a moment a very much superior sign for Cancer, because Cancer is the maternal sign of the zodiac. As you see, it's cradling this baby, Gemini baby. Also, the moon rules the tides and the tides rule the ships. I don't think it makes so much difference. Crescent shaped like the crescent moon, which rules the sign. The two twins are here. Mrs. Walkwood, who discovered the whole zodiac, found this one, and I found that. This is her figure of Leo, which can be improved upon if one only looks at the natural contours of the area. A marvellous lion's head is drawn by the contours themselves, and this is one of the reasons, and that reason is repeated in the head of Gemini, why I can't help feeling that this must be originally a natural thing. If it's going to be man-made, even by supermen, supposing there are such beings, they would have drawn it in some other way, more accurate. You would also, I think, see the period of the art, but here there's no period. It seems to be almost like figures in the farmhouse. Leo, Virgo. This one you'll hardly see in this rather delightfully dim light. Nice for old ladies like me, not so good for looking at Libra. That again is slightly displaced, and it's a bird. It's really a dove, Mrs. Walkwood said. And it's in the middle, she suggests, because it's the logos or spirit flying from the head of the dying sun god at Sagittarius, who has been dragged off his horse by this Leviathan of the deep, the sun setting at the end of the year, November, December, or at the end of the day. One has to remember this is a great clock, and it can either be an annual clock or it can be a 24-hour clock, 12-hour. Then we get to Scorpio, which I think is fairly easily recognisable, which I've painted red again, for obvious reasons. Sagittarius, not a centaur. He looks like one. The centaur line is there, but if you look, you can see the horse's head coming through, and also paths which draw his neck in the middle of this figure. And also he's got a leg which is going into the Capricorn's head. Explain that in a minute. There's some very nice place names around there. Cantor's Green is here, and Breach Lane. He's got a splendid pair of buttocks of his own, as I think you can see. Maybe this is the origin of all centaurs, and one of the reasons why I tentatively suggest that this was perhaps the origin of all zodiacs. Because centaurs are a very old sign. I think the first one that has been found belongs to about 1800 BC, and is found on a boundary stone in Babylonia. So, if it was a mistake made by those traders and merchantmen who travelled between Chaldea, Sumeria, and Britain in search of metals, because Western Britain was very rich in metals, and mined from ancient times, long BC. But if they did take a copy of this figure and forgot that, then you've got your figure of the centaur, which makes no sense at all. This at least makes sense. The dying sun god being pulled off his horse at year's end or day's end into his setting in the sea. He's a man of many cliches, Sagittarius. He's between the devil, Scorpio, and the deep, Pisces. He's also got one foot in the grave of Capricorn, the earth sign of December, when the earth is hard and frozen. And Capricorn is another kind of death sign in a way. This long, thin horn, which you can see here, I hope you can see, is a rampart. I'm not sure if it's Bronze Age, but certainly Iron Age pottery has been found in it. And there's so many of the other antiquities of the area are Bronze Age, I would think it's quite likely that that's a Bronze Age monument too. It's got the size, you know, and splendour of the Bronze Age in it, and perhaps even Neolithic. It's 20 feet high on this road here, which goes to Shepton Mallet and this way to Glastonbury. And if you look, you can see it on the left. And it gradually runs down 3/4 of a mile right into the earth, into the level land. What it was put there for, there have been various speculations, nobody's quite sure. But we do know, and I've verified this myself, that it's locally known as the Golden Coffin, which is rather interesting, because here is the sun god descending into the grave of the year, and he's got his leg in this coffin. So he's certainly got one foot in the grave. Aquarius is here, and here is Glastonbury Tor, actually forming and modelling, contouring the head of this bird which Mrs. Maltwood said was a phoenix. She had reason for this. Some of the reasons are in the place names. The phoenix is the bird of self-renewal. He dies at the end of the year, he begins the new year, and he comes up rising from his own ashes. He makes his own funeral pile, as it's said in the old bestiaries, of cinnamon and other spices. And here we've got Cinnamon Lane, that's coming up on the Tor, Ashwell Lane, and strangely enough, Actis Fields here in Glastonbury, just recently built over by Castle, now housing estate, which has made everybody else look very pleased. Actis was the son of Sol in Greek mythology, and fled to Heliopolis, city of Heliopolis. And it's in the city of Heliopolis that the phoenix flies in and perches on the top of a pyramid and makes his own funeral pyre and then is reborn from his own ashes. So it's curious you can get these three names there, Cinnamon Lane, Ashwell Lane and Actis Fields, as though the ancients knew of this phoenix. He's also, of course, as a water carrier, he's in the shape of an urn or a water pot. And daily, whether it was a drought or flood, must come from immeasurable reservoirs under the Mendips, and somehow comes through this sea level plain, comes up through the Taurus, marvellous and I don't pretend to understand. But it is an unfailing supply. Now the hills here are not great enough to contain such a supply, so it's been supposed that it's the Mendips which is the source of this holy spring. Mrs. Morton said that this is the original round table of Arthur. Of course, this is the Vale of Avon, and it is itself a bowl surrounded by quite steep but small hills, not very high, but certainly very steep, all the way round. The original round table of Arthur. With Arthur, Guinevere, and Virgo, Mordred, Scorpio, Mordred the Killer, Gawain, Hector, Morgan Le Fay, Galahad, Percival, and Lancelot, still seated round as the signs of the Zodiac. This, she said, is the origin of all Arthurian legend. And why not? When you begin to think of the Zodiac as the origin of all religions, is it not? I'm sure nobody here will disagree with that.
How do you spell Morgan Le Fay?
M-O-R-G-A-N.
And afterwards?
Le, you'll understand that bit. Fay, and that bit too.
I do
That's
right.
French.
How do you spell it?
Morgan Le Fay, F-A-Y-E.
After L? L-E?
Le,
and?
the fairy. Morgan is the fairy.
Le Fay? How do you write Le Fay?
That's right.
Fay.
F-A-Y-E.
F-A-Y-E.
Well, how would you pronounce it?
No, in French it's Morgan Le Fay.
Just the same. Yes.
No, it's La. Well, no, but I'm
Oh,
just
La.
surprising that it just
Oh,
came
but we've
from French.
forgotten about that. Yes.
Yeah,
You see, we only have one.
It's a feminine in French.
What they call a demonstrative pronoun for everything.
Yeah.
We're a little bit barbaric.
I was surprised to hear such a French expression.
Well, of course, all Arthurian legend was first written down in Norman
Yeah.
French.
I wrote it down too.
She's Morrigan originally.
Yeah, the Morrigan, the Irish Morrigan. Yeah.
Excuse me.
But it didn't come from Norman France. It was written down there because the troubadours, the bards, the British bards, were chased out by the terrible goings on in England at the time, the Saxons, the Jutes, the Angles and so on. And they fled to Brittany, where they already had an extension of Britain. That's why it's called Britain. The same family ruled.
And you mean Brittany comes from Great Britain?
Yes, it's called Little Britain in Geoffrey of Monmouth, if you remember. And that's why we're called Great Britain. We're a little bit bigger than Britain.
So there is no influence on the other sense. I mean, it's not Brittany which has influenced Great Britain.
No.
It's
Oh no, I don't think so.
It's a
I never
piece of
heard
the
that
people.
the Britons invaded
It's
England.
New
and
Britain,
colonised
it's
it.
New Great
Well,
Britain.
Right.
Like you say, New England.
Right.
They just fled from Great Britain and they
That's right.
settled in.
Yes.
But it was the Britons that fled. They went from Britain into Cornwall,
Ah, you see,
Wales,
that
and
is-
Brittany.
They are both directions. It's an exchange. But
I-
Britons
yes.
came to Brittany before. Britons came to Cornwall at a certain time.
Oh yes, I think there's been a lot of that too.
So they just returned to their original place.
No, I wouldn't say. Well, there you are. You're talking about early period that I'm not really conversant with. I wouldn't like to say.
No, I
The
just.
Breton language is very similar to
Yes.
English and Welsh, and it was that it
They're
used
very
to be those
related.
people used to live all over Britain,
Yeah.
Great Britain, but they were pushed into Brittany, Cornwall and Wales by the Angles and Saxons.
So they
in
started
fact,
going back
you
into
can't
Britain
say
again.
we, the British, have influenced Brittany. It's those Britons that influenced.
No,
that went
and
to
it's
Brittany.
what I think what he's saying is that the Celts were originally in France and spread into Britain. Now this could well be true.
Originally.
Yes.
It's a return.
It's a return.
Appears to be.
Yes, I suppose so. Of course, I don't think of it that way, so it's a new idea. Give me a shock. But still, no doubt you're absolutely right. There are about 100 place names which have significance mostly when you understand that the signs are clear. For instance, Guinevere, if you read your Mort d'Arthur, another French term,
Yes, it is.
Jerusalem. Her father was Leodegrance, is that not right? The king of Camelot. Well, here is Leo, obviously her father, Leodegrance. I said it was Lancelot, but then we have to double the figures in the characters of Mort d'Arthur, and in fact of all Grail legends and Round Table legends, because there are only 12 to go round. So obviously she's the Queen of Camelot, so it's hardly surprising to find out here Queen Camel. But the archaeologists say Queen Camel was a village which always belonged to the Queens of England, and that's why it's called Queen Camel. It's nothing to do with this problematical virgin who says here. But in fact, he doesn't ask himself, why did it always belong to the Queens of England? Obviously because this is the ancient secret which was passed on from royal father to son, from the Celts through the Saxons. I don't know where it stopped, or I don't even know if it has stopped. One doesn't know these things. And that's why this particular part was given to the Queen of Camelot, to the Queen of England. There's Queen Street here, coming down from the dove. Can you see that figure of the dove? I can't see myself, it's very difficult. There's the two wings, there's the head coming down here, and the body comes up here. Sorry, it's so faint. But Queen Street comes down through the wheat sheaf. She's got about 11 place names to remind us of her character. And it's a multiple character. She's the triple goddess, the earth mother. You see, she holds her wheat sheaf, as always in the sign of Virgo. She's usually portrayed with a wheat sheaf. She is really the queen of the land. She owns the round table. You remember when Arthur married Guinevere, Leodegrance gave them the round table as her dowry. In fact, he was really
Donc,
giving
nous sommes avec la
this
le
area.
Zodiaque et la table ronde du roi.
But there are all sorts of names which remind you of older legends than Arthurian ones. For instance, the River Caine does quite a lot of the drawing here. It draws the belly and the whole of the back leg of Leo and goes on to draw the poke bonnet, the nose, the sunken gums, and the chin and neck, breast, pregnant stomach, and the head. of Dogan, making her obviously the original Mother Carey that we've half forgotten about. Anybody read Charles Kingsley's Little Babies? That has a whole chapter, do you remember, on Mother Carey? He meets her when he sinks to the bottom of the sea. Well, here's the original Mother Carey, drawn by the Mother Carey itself. The old witch goddess. And she's more like a witch than a beautiful young woman. But in fact, the air photograph will show you a double face with beautiful sunken dew ponds for eyes, quite an elegant female inside the old witch's head. But I don't think I've got a picture of that here unless I open the books and pass it round. Why is Gawain earrings? If you know something about the character of Gawain, you'll see why Mrs. Morford says, yes, this is really the first sign of the Zodiac, Gawain. He was impulsive, rash, like the spring. He's full of love affairs and he leaves a trail of broken hearts behind. He loved beginning things, but he never finishes them. He was, in fact, the first to jump up from the round table when the Grail search was mooted, to say, I'm going off after the Grail. But in fact, he never achieved it. Not in Mallory, at any rate. There are various versions extant. I think there are one or two which say that he was the first to find the Grail. But in Mallory, he certainly gets bored and says no adventures have happened to him. It's boring. He's off on some other tack. Hector, I myself think, is much more likely to be Taurus is more likely to be Hector than anybody else, because Taurus is the builder, the nourisher, the provider, the earth side, the constant plodder, the dependable foster father. As you see, he's looking after the babe. In fact, we have the Bethlehem picture here, as all astrologers I'm sure will recognise. I don't for nothing say that it's the origin of all religions. Gemini, the babe, in the stars of the manger, which as you know occur within the stars of Cancer, and the stars of Acella, the ass and her foal, also in the stars in the constellation of Cancer. And here, of course, is the ox, so there's the whole manger scene. But there's Sir Hector, the ox, looking after him, building the house for the baby. All Josephs in the Bible seem to me to be Taurus. They're always looking after somebody younger and more vulnerable than themselves. There's Joseph the carpenter, looking after the babe Jesus. There's Joseph, the Grand Vizier of Egypt, way back in the Old Testament, looking after the young Benjamin. Remember? That seems to me to be a prototype of Grail's story too. I don't have to go into that. And then there's Joseph of Arimathea, who, as everybody knows, came to Britain, landed on Weary All Hill here, planted his staff. It flowered not only at Easter, which is normal for hawthorns, when you get them to grow by sticking the staff in the ground, but also at Christmas. A curious and mystical fact which is verifiable. They send a sprig of the flowering hawthorn to the Queen every Christmas. I should be surprised if she doesn't know about this. The search of the Grail, the quest of the Grail, must have been the quest of the knights for their own souls. They were, in fact, searching for their own signs. We've had some signs, the importance of some signs run down rather this evening, but I can see that this is what they must have been looking for, their own signs. In the process of getting to know themselves, I think nobody would disagree that this is basically what the Grail quest is really about. So they were going round and round in the Vale of Avalon, trying to find themselves. Only two of them, three of them actually, finally did, and one was Galahad. Galahad was the Christ-like knight. And this is where I must show you this picture, because you can't see him so well on the map, and certainly not in this light. But if I pass this round, I don't think you'll find much difficulty in seeing within the baby's head, there it is, see the lolling overhead, which is remembered by Lolliver Hill, which is his body, obviously referring to this head. There's the lolling over head of the baby. Now within that, here's the baby's body coming down here, with his arm, it's in his groin like this with a big fist. You see it right down at the bottom. There's the elbow. But if you look inside, there's this most astonishing and naturally drawn face, Christ-like. But of course, eons before Christianity. So it's either a prefiguring, or it's a statement of something which is eternal, of which Christianity itself is a restatement. You see the forelock here, the top of the head here. The trees draw the head and the hair and the beard, more or less where they should, and used to much more completely until these agricultural fields encroached on the natural woodland. And the wood only grows there, which is very strange, because nobody's planting it and keeping it that way. Well, not consciously, or not for astrological or archaeo-astrological reasons. There's the forehead, the nose, the nostril, the line of the moustache, the beard, down to the point here, the point of the jaw here, the ear, the eye, and this is the back of the head, which used to be all covered in trees. A very steep hill. Now that line is a natural contour line, but in fact it's easy to see because it's been ramparted in Bronze Age times, and a British camp has been made of the whole of this Christ-like face. All that white area there is the British camp at the top of Dundon Hill. If you find that head a little bit difficult, when you see it, it really jump out at you. But if you find it difficult, this one is very easy to see. Here's the line of the hair. The nose goes straight down there. The nostril here, the beard, and under the chin there. Then both hands are tied above the head. These are field boundaries only. Oh no, that's a road. That's a road all the way down there, and right under his feet, seems to be tucked under him. But the figure, the Christ-like figure, ends here at the hips. See, it's a double figure. The hands are tied up here by long, thin field strips, like thongs, and the hands go right into the form. Now, can you see it from here? I'll pass it round and make it a bit easier. It'll be clever to see it. And when you finish looking at that, I can't resist showing you a similar and equally astonishing figure, much nearer to hand. This is the Christ-like figure of the Kingston Zodiac. This is the position it's in here. Looks like a little boy, also in a boat, not such an elaborate boat because the bull's taking up all this space. But the boat is itself drawn by the River Thames, and the other side of it drawn by Hurst Road and Reservoir. But here's the figure of this young boy in the boat. A very dynamic torso, rather beautiful. And where you see this big black mark, that's Island Barn Reservoir. Look for the head, marvellous Christ-like head, which runs all round that reservoir. It's still there, and it's drawn quite naturally, as far as anybody can tell. It looks like a natural river, by the River Mole. The torso is very dynamic, marvellous. The place names are interesting. There's Crutchfield Lane is on his crutch, at Walton. That's where William Lilly used to live, isn't it? And there's a place called Hertmore here on his side. So if this is a kind of prefiguring of the Christ figure, this is where the lance of Longinus obviously penetrated. There are many other place names, notably Esher, here, where the two twins' hands are joined together. And I'll show you a picture of the second twin of the Kingston Zodiac, because that's, again, very photogenic. That's the Kingston. Yes, come on, do.
In my own experience, I was brought up in the head of Virgo in Chi.
Oh, chief.
And my parents now moved out of London because my father's been moved by his office. They now live about a few miles southwest of the head of Virgo.
That's good.
Southwest of the Glastonbury
That
Zodiac.
is strange.
I myself have lived in the horn of Capricorn of the Pim sign Zodiac, which I don't know.
Yes, I don't know a great deal about
I don't know
it.
much about it either, but some people have traced it. We were living actually in the horn, so I stepped outside Virgo to Capricorn once. But I find that quite amazing. When you brought out the stuff about Kings of the Zodiac, I already knew my parents were living there.
It would have
And I
been
found out that
astrologer,
I'd been
wouldn't
brought up in the head of Virgo.
Yes, I didn't.
I'm not a Virgo. I'm no Virgo in my chart.
It's common on that map.
No, it's just, here's the Portsmouth Road, coming down here, and probably just out of it. Leatherhead is just at the bottom there.
Is Kingston on the line?
No, Thames Ditton is on the Lion. That's on the Lion's Head. Of course, there are lions on the Lion at Chessington Zoo, which is one of the nice things about it.
Kingston.
Kingston is actually on the Dove of Libra. It's a very nicely formed dove, made by all the main roads of Kingston. No person around with that rally. It's extraordinarily nice made. The river has to go around it. The river doesn't make anything. The river simply flows round the contours of the land. It does the same. I didn't mean to break off and talk about the Kingston Zodiac, but I have to show these two so that you can compare them. In both Norman figure, generally, you get this hostile figure. But now it's the same thing. One of the things that comes out of these terrestrial zodiacs, better than in the ones that you astrologers are used to looking at, is that there's only a trinity of human figures. I'm counting Gemini as one, because Gemini is really one figure split into two. It's man, and man is split into two. Male and female, conscious and subconscious, mortal and immortal, spiritual and flesh, and all the rest of it. But really, just those three figures. You can call him God the Father, or the creative force, the Mother Goddess, or the receptive Earth which harbours and nourishes the sea, and man, or the Son of Man. Hence, this extraordinary Christ-like figure, and I can't feel there's any other explanation for it. It's really telling us the origin of all religions. Not to think of Christ as something quite a different species, something unreachable, but as the Son of Man. And we have the same potential. We awake. We have the same astrological understanding of religion. And they asked him and said, Mr. Blake, he was supposed to be rather heretical, he was an astrologer, but he was obviously a poet and understood things in a much more mystical way, not in an exoteric. Blake, do you really believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God? And he said with great affirmation, yes. And so am I. And so are you. And that's what I feel is being said by the Zodiac, really. Not to make the enormous difference, which is depressing people, between Jesus or any avatar and ourselves, but to realize that the potential is there if we follow the rail and achieve true self-knowledge. See, all the other figures are either animals, except the ship, which is made by man. And that's one of the many things that the Zodiac seems to be saying. Now, it doesn't really say it in the Zodiacs we have today. For one thing, you don't have just three human figures, you've got the water man, water carrier. So it spoils it. I see, so we've moved the sun clock to Sagittarius now, haven't we? Oh, well, that's a thought. Yes,
Aquarius.
yes. He's only half human. That means of course. Yeah, but you see, they spoiled him too, really, didn't they? Ahura was always the sun god, and Ahura was always Sagittarius, among the Medes and the Persians and the Chaldeans.
Well, it would still work as part of the session of the equivalence, isn't it? The sun power moves, and the sun powers around the equator.
Yes, true, yes. But it's moved up that way, not that way. However, yes, the precession of the equinoxes. With regard to the precession of the equinoxes, it's rather interesting. If you look at these as
we're now here, and that's where Glastonbury itself is, in the Abbey. So it seems to me that maybe there's something of great importance coming from this most ancient mystical church of the British Isles. Not from the Abbey itself or from the Church of England, but from the understanding of what's been, of the ancient mysteries which have been buried in this area for so long.
Where's the centre of the
Buckley, a place called Buckley. The North Pole should go there on a little sanctuary wood, it's a bird sanctuary. But actually Arthur's pointing to one centre. There are various centres. If you take the 4 fixed stars, he's pointing to the centre of the 4 fixed stars cross. Aldebaran falls on those funny little tiny field strips, quite different in direction and size from all the fields round. And Tyrese falls at a place called Stone, just off the Ross Way, just across the village. Regulus is, I think Regulus is on his tail. Anyway, it's very near there. And Fomalhaut is just up above here, on the Fountain's Wall, just north of Glastonbury, if you take Earthfall for the fixed stars. And this is where his finger is pointing, the actual. It's curious that the finger should point to this.
Mary, might that be the magnetic pole where he's pointing? This is interesting that, well, maybe that's where the magnetic pole might be now.
Well, it does wobble about a lot, but I wouldn't like to say that's again, not on astronomy. It's wobbling about something terrible at the moment.
Well, I mean, it is something from geographic.
Yes, sometimes it's very simple, and sometimes it gets near. Well, I can't answer that. I'm afraid I don't know much astronomy. It's not really
Do you see any significance in the orientation line?
It is curious. The northern figures, the winter figures are in the north, and the southern figures are in the sunny south, which is interesting if you're in the northern hemisphere. Maybe if you found them in Australia, they should be the other way up. And the summer figures should be in the north. Right? Well, if you start looking in Australia for them, it's terrible. But it seems to me, just as we've just been through the Piscean age, it has very much the character. Well, more about this than I do. Piscean age of religious wars, the two fishes going against each other, and of empires built by sea, and so on. You come to the nomad age, the Aries, 2,150 years. Then before that you come, this is where there's a good deal of destruction and migration right across the globe, mostly from east to west. Then you come before that, the Victorian age, which was a very settled, solid age of grand civilizations, magnificent buildings, the pyramids, Avebury, Stonehenge, all are great, all big lynchets, those magnificent lynchets over on both sides. All stem back to that period, the ploughing, the farrowing ox. Then before that, you get to the age of the people who worship the Kabiri. They were merchants, sailors. Jesus was a sailor, wasn't he? It says in Suzanne. Is that right? But he's a sailor here. There he is in his boat. And then you get to the age of the flood. By this time we've got back to 9,000 BC, which oddly enough is just when Plato tells us Atlantis went down. This must have had tremendous repercussions in the especially to the west coast. But many people say to the whole of Britain, and not only to Britain but to Scandinavia, which was decimated by it. And the Baltic was a new sea after this cataclysm. Of course, about that period, we were separated from the continent for the first time. The river, which has now become, as in the English Channel, but that wasn't there it is possible that we have a true memory of this ghastly calendar.
It's in the Macedonian, they say that before this time, Wales and Ireland wasn't separated except by the channel.
Right.
So
That's
it's
when
in
Bran
part
waded
of-
across, you mean?
Yeah, where Bran waded, which is like a memory of where people could wade, and it actually says in the Macedonian.
I know it says in an older covering record, I've forgotten quite which triad, that the earth was re-peopled after the flood, which was the flood of Menai Straits and Menu was the Noah. And his name is remembered in the mountains of Manau, which is Snowdon. So he was a sort of British Noah, was re-peopled by Duivan and Duivan, the man and woman of God, is that right? This was in the age of ages. It does seem as though they were memory. But I was just pointing out that it's interesting when you have a ship with cancer, not a crab, how meaningful this period of 8,000-9,000 BC can become. In fact, in many ways, it gives a superior interpretation, which Libram would rather be signed by a dove than the Pale scale. The dove is an air sign, its bird is communicative, the way the scale is certainly not. It's the Logos, flying from the head of the dying sun, giving inspiration, not only life, but also ideas to the earth.
The older Zodiac exists,
Which may be why it's been put in here.
and later we was called out forwards of the Scorpio. It's called very shortly. Technically, that score goes upside down, which isn't there. That way around, we have leaving in the right place.
Well, I didn't know how to go and put it upside down. Mrs. Morple's was the other way up, with the tail coming down, sticking back of the horse. But I wasn't very keen on how particular Scorpio, which I don't want to pick on without slides to show you.
As what you said about the veil, certainly part of the veil does the spine itself, but nonetheless there's always the same kind of veil being outside of the vessels. The veil is found for the sort of placed on that table. Has anybody contacted with the veil?
Yes, there are one or two.
The comment
I
was,
think there are two grails here that you
because the traditional image of the dove descending from the
Well, this seems to me, if you remember the stories of the appearance of the grail, this seems to me to be the grail itself. That is the cauldron of Carigwyn, the old mother goddess, cauldron of inspiration. And it's the place from which all energy and life ascended into our grave, which is how we are now, into form. It was inchoate, boiling and bubbling, and she was making her sticky brew. When you come into the state of life that we're in, this is when it all becomes formed into static
The
life.
infant still seems like a supposition because you have the
No,
mother
wait a minute, it's too fast, too fast. Here's the dove. He always precedes the grail procession, doesn't he? And he has in his beak a censer. It seems to me that if you trace those the masts and the poop of the ship, they will come onto the beak of the dove. They do. And in fact there's a third which will go right through the eye and the heart and the groin, bleeding groin of the crescent in Gemini. So that you've got the druid broad arrow, rather a narrow broad arrow, perhaps, but still, there it is, the inspiration or logos actually descending into man nature. So, if you remember in the stories of the Grail, they are quite often, and in various versions, it always recurs. First of all, the Grail appears, but then appears a man above it, above the cup. The vessel, they call it. They don't call it a cup. This is a vessel. It's always called a vessel. He appears above the vessel, and then it turns into a baby. And then it turns back into a bleeding, suffering Saviour figure again. Well, what I've shown seems to me to make sense of the origin of the story. So I think that's certainly one
explanation for the grave. And of course, sometimes it can be seen, sometimes it can't. Sometimes it's forgotten. It's buried actually in the... But the other one, which somebody else mentioned, I think you said, didn't you? That this is the grave, also Chalice Well. Joseph of Arimathea said to throw the Christian cup of the Last Supper into Chalice Well to hide it. And that's the origin of Blood Spring, why it's called Blood Spring. And that's another funny, strange, mysterious coincidence. Clots of crimson algae float on the surface of Chalice Well water, which is otherwise exceedingly pure and very good for us. But that's like clots of blood. And why do they float in this particular well? That's right, it's just here, on the beak. It's in the beak of the water Caine. Remember Chaldean and Indian stories of a great bird, Zoom, who burst through the ring of fire, that's the Zodiaque, or reincarnations, and carried away the water of the moon, or new life in his beak. This seems to be a representation of that, or maybe they're a representation of this, I'd like to say.
Chalice wasn't a sense Guinevere, it was a Guinevere.
I didn't quite catch it.
Is there a Guinevere?
There's an eye well here. I've never thought very much about it, but it's on the A303, which is, where's the A303? It's just down here, eye well. It's near West Camel and Queen Camel. And another place called Wales, interestingly enough, just there.
I thought there was a Guinevere's Mother Saint in the top.
Well, there might be. You found something I didn't know about. I've never read about this. There are stories about that here which are interesting. Mrs. Moorcroft discovered that among the ancient writings of Avalon, kept in Glastonbury Abbey, was a fragment which said that Avalon was haunted by a lion and a giant. And this is the first figure she found by looking on the map. She wasn't expecting to see anything on this scale, but she was looking for the itinerary of the Knights of the Grail in the Vale of Avalon, because she'd been asked to make a drawing of this for the High History of the Holy Grail of Taylor's House, Norman Finch, one of the early Grail stories, about 1200, 1230, I think it is. And that's how she saw it, not by accident. She found that the knights always had an encounter or a battle with a lion when they were some way out from Grail Castle, which is soon to be up here, Glastonbury. And then suddenly she saw this. She was a scout, so it gave her a kind of right